I'm Cynthia Chin Lee, VP of Programs for AUW, and it's my pleasure to introduce our diversity panel today. This is a topic that we picked because last year the theme for some of our programs was equity, and I thought, oh, this year it should be diversity. Little did I know that there would be other forces that would come in and try to smash diversity and give it a bad name. But I'm really proud that we have a panel today, and they have diverse backgrounds, and I will say we will be fighting for more and more diversity. I do have one statistic that in the current Congress, for the first time since 2011, the number of women representatives has declined, although racial and ethnic diversity has slightly increased. So I'm going to ask our speakers to come up, and the first one will be Godfrey Watson. He has a BS in computer science, has worked as a software engineer, an instructional aide, and flight instructor. He's now retired and lives in the Half Moon Bay area. And we have Silva. She's a local artist, a muralist. You'll know one of her murals for sure. She's a small business owner and a graduate of San Jose State University in graphic design and illustration. She also attended Sacramento State and is a member of the Colony of Coastside Artists. And then Joaquin Jimenez, could you come up? I think many of you know Joaquin too. He's lived in Half Moon Bay for 38 years, has been involved in the community for over 25. In addition to having served on the city council, Joaquin served as mayor. He's an immigrant and bilingual in Spanish and English, and he advocates for farm workers and housing for them and other essential workers. And Elliott Franks. Elliott attended the Royal Northern College of Music in the United Kingdom and works as a funeral director at the San Francisco Columbarium and Funeral Home. He also assists in the music program at First Presbyterian Church of Palo Alto, which is where I know him, and he's a member of the LGBTQ community. So our first question is to allow each panelist to talk about where they grew up, how and when they moved to this area, and then we will open it up to some questions, but we'll start with Godfrey.
So I made some notes here. I'm happy to be able to do this. It actually took me back in my life and made me think about some things, and I'm happy to share that with you.
Do you want to have them bring up the mic? Yeah, if you could bring up the mic closer to your mouth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm happy to be here. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and was raised in Nashville, Tennessee. Both of my parents were from the South, and that has a lot to do with who I am. I came to the West Coast in Columbus Day of 1962. I actually came on a motorcycle, and after graduating from Oregon State University in computer science, I worked in geophysical oceanography there, and eventually I moved to the, like around 1974, I moved to the San Jose area for a job. In December of 1986, in San Jose, I realized that I wanted to be by the ocean, and I immediately, like a New Year's resolution, called a realtor, and by March 4th, or actually the 6th, I was in Montero. So that's how it got started here. Talk a little about how it feels to be diverse on the coast side, and actually the coast side has been wonderful for me. I feel accepted, welcome, liked, quite normal, and included. My partners, well, I've always had partners of different race. Um, I'd say that nowadays, especially in this area of the country, actually, my everyday life is somewhat normal, and it doesn't seem to matter really, that my wife is not the same race as me. It's no longer unusual to see racially diverse people in groups, and it's more socially acceptable. So it's actually comfortable. So discrimination. I'd have to say that life is actually been a positive experience for me. Possibly because of my attitude. I just don't notice the problems. I don't observe the problems. I just live. Don't have any disagreements with anything. And I'm not really bothered about what's around me that much. Being from the South in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, sure, discrimination was part of life. And I'm reading here. So this was normal. It's just the way it was. And I think I just either didn't notice that much or accepted it. Coming west was freeing, though. It was huge when I got out west. It was a more accepting social environment, and people seemed to feel to express their own independence and ideas, some innocence about race, and there was not as much of like a social mob culture, like in the South. You just have to go along with the way it was. Living in Oregon was very pleasant, and that's where I came. And it was, I don't know, it's interesting. There was rednecks, there were racists, there were non-racists, there was acceptance and curiosity. I had people come up and feel my hair because they'd never seen a black person before. And it was very pleasing. And simplicity, freedom, and independence. That's what I felt when I came out here. Now, the changing laws and attitudes, in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s, did cause some, there were people there that they thought that, if you had a job, it was because you were, affirmative action, you weren't qualified. So I ran into a little of that as an engineer, but in general, my opinion about that is most people who were, let's say, a lot of people who were hired doing affirmative action had to be a little better than the norm. They had to be a little more qualified because the companies that hired them had to show them that way. So I noticed that was true. Maybe not in all cases, but in some cases, or maybe even many cases. Anyway, living in Oregon was pleasant, and I liked it a lot. It had a big influence on me. Let's see what I can say here. So I guess I'll just summarize what I'm saying is, for me, living on the coast side in this day and time, I'm really unaware of any systematic racial discrimination. Maybe it's there, but I don't see it. I'm not bothered by anything, and the diversity of our citizens here and others' freedom of choice. You know, they're not controlled as much by their social environment. Actually makes the difference. So that's it.
Can we pass it to Ellen?
Thank you.
Thank you, Godfrey.
Still on?
I didn't turn it.
Okay.
Hello?
Oh, yep.
It's on. Okay, I'm Ellen, and let's see, I grew up in the East Bay. I was born in Richmond. I lived in El Cerrito until I was in high school, and my family moved up to Napa, which was a culture shock because in Richmond and El Cerrito, it was a very multicultural community, and the high school I went to was quite diverse. I had planned I would be going to UC Berkeley to college, and that was going to be partly because I loved the area and all the different people, and I felt that it was very liberal, and moving to Napa was just the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me. And as I in later years came out being gay, it would have been much better for me to have stayed in the East Bay than to go to Napa. The school I went to in Napa was all white, and it was just a shock. It took me all of high school to kind of get over it. I kept in touch with my friends in the East Bay, and I'm still in touch with all of them, and I'm not in touch with anybody that I knew in Napa, so that was a huge, just the wrong place for me. But anyway, I went to college in Sacramento and then in San Jose, and lived on the peninsula for 15 years after college, and then moved here in 1996. So I've been in El Granada for all these years, and I moved here because several friends of mine moved here first, and I came to visit them all the time, and finally I thought, I'm coming over here more than I'm over in wherever I lived at the time, Redwood City, I think, and I should be here. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have found this community, which includes the colony of coastside artists that I became involved with 15 years ago, and I'm a self-employed graphic designer, muralist, artist, illustrator, and that's what my degree is in. And it took me a while to get into the community here on the coast, but I started working in schools doing murals with mostly elementary school, but now I work at Pilarcitos High School, the alternative high school in town, and we do mural projects all year round. I work in Pescadero, which I love. If I moved any place besides El Granada, I would move to Pescadero in a heartbeat, because it reminds me of the little town of Pinole in the East Bay where my parents were born and grew up. And I feel comfortable here on the coast because it's small. It's, you know, you can recognize people, you can drive right up to things without a big parking deal. Driving to Pescadero for work and La Honda, which I've just finished a mural there. Driving down Highway 1 to go to work, I mean, how can it get any better than that? It's awesome. So, as far as being discriminated against, I think I definitely in the 80s and 90s felt like it was unsafe to walk down streets on the peninsula with my girlfriend and hold hands. We got things thrown at us, we got yelled at. That was in Palo Alto, which I think of as a pretty, as a pretty diverse place, but that was in the 80s and 90s. It was a different time then. Things have moved forward, fortunately. I've been involved with the Coastside Rainbow Women for the last 25 years, not often, but sometimes I'm invited to things and I sometimes go to events. Coast Pride here in town is a great organization. I did a mural project with many groups there. We had a trans group, the middle school group of LGBT and high school group, a parents group, a caregivers group, and we did a mural that the members of the organization carried down Main Street during Gay Pride last year. That was the first time I attended that here in Half Moon Bay. It was awesome. So there are places to, you know, find and feel safe. I think I've felt not too much discrimination in the workplace because my workplace doesn't necessarily know about my personal life too much. I work with young kids, so that's kind of a choice. I mean, I'm not sure I would talk about it very much because I'm there to facilitate them creating a mural about their hopes and dreams and all of that. Got a stream of consciousness here. You did a good job weaving all that together. I'm thinking, how can I do that? So, I think I felt more discrimination, honestly, as a woman than, and maybe even as a senior, recently. I mean, definitely the 80s and 90s, being gay was not, you know, as accepted as it is now. But I definitely have felt discriminated against, especially in pay. And this comes up with murals because I have a lot of friends who are women who do murals, and I have a lot of friends who are men, and there is more. We've done a little bit of question and answering among peers and found out that the guys are getting paid a whole lot more than we are, and we're on it. We're gonna figure out what to do about that. So, yeah. Did I miss anything? We're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joaquin Jimenez. I was born in Mexico. Came to Half Moon Bay at the age of 13. Both my parents were farm workers here at the nursery Men's Exchange. They originally lived in Daly City, but when they decided to bring the whole family to the United States, you know, we moved into Half Moon Bay. We lived on Johnson Street right next to the Methodist Church. And my brother and I, my younger brother, we attended Cunha. I was an 8th grader, he was a 6th grader. My sister went to our Hatch, and my little brother, he was barely 1, so he stayed home with my aunt. But let's see, I graduated high school, you know, I graduated Cunha, went to high school. I graduated high school. After high school, I attended Chico State University. I received my bachelor's in sociology from Chico, and I came back to Half Moon Bay to work in the community. I was a teacher at the Hatch, the immersion program. Sheila, Miss McBride, who passed 15 years ago. And from there, I went to work for the probation department. I worked in the school district for about 7 years total. I went to work for the juvenile probation department, San Mateo County. Worked in juvenile hall in the Boys Ranch in La Honda. I was one of the juvenile correctional officers, group supervisor / supervisor at the Boys Ranch. At the same time, so I was working in the school district, working probation, and going to school, SF State, working on my credential, and raising a family as well. And I was there for 15 years. I came out of there and I started working with the community, with the farmer community in Puente, Pescadero area. From there, I came to Half Moon Bay to work with Dallas. I was with Puente for 3 years, Dallas for 3 years. During that time, I found my own organization. It's called Rancho San Benito. It's a new organization here in the coast to work with farm workers. So what we do with that Rancho San Benito, we help farm workers make the transition to becoming farmers. So we do a 1 acre per person, small farming, small programs. And we are getting ready to start after many years, you know, struggling to get funding, to find land, and the opportunity to do that. We are getting ready to start. So part of the work that we do with Ernst Benito, the participants, they have to take courses with the Renaissance. Renaissance is part of the Opportunity Center of the Coastside here in Half Moon Bay, where they learn how to run a business because they're entrepreneurs. So that's the idea of the program. So we don't teach anybody how to farm. They've been farming for many years, 20 years plus, some of them 30 years. But without any credentials, without any certifications, they will not be able to find land to farm. They will not be able to find either a grant or a loan for their business. So that's what we do. We certify them. Also with Resource Conservation District in San Mateo County, they will also be certified with them about different irrigation systems, compost, healthy soils, crop rotation. So the idea of Rancho Benito is to get the participants certified, so it'll be easier for them to become a farmer. You know, and I'm saying this because there's been discrimination all across the board. You know, with me, discrimination has been from day one. You know, as soon as I landed at Cunha, my first day of school, you know, I felt the discrimination. I felt the harassment. I felt everything you can think of. Name calling. When this was back in '87. So we were not a lot of Mexicans, you know, at the schools, you know, here in the school district. You know, so it was obvious. We couldn't go anywhere without being called a name. You know, every class, you know, you can think of, you know, in Cunha. From beginner to wetback to all kinds of other things. Probably my first year in Cunha, give or take, I probably got into about 10 fights, right? And everything related to harassment and discrimination. From being called names, PE class, doing lunch, being pushed around, being kicked, you know, on purpose. And of course, you know, for me it was defending myself, or defending somebody else. Back then in the 80s, the girls, you know, the Mexican girls, mostly Mexican, I think we have one Salvadorian, they used to wear, you know, their hair like braided like mine, you know, with a nice bow, you know, nice hair, you know, the parents would do the hair for them. And some of the students would think it was funny, you know, to make fun of them. Every time we had a new student, you know, students will make fun of them. So of course, me being one of the older, you know, Mexican kids in the school, you know, they would play Joaquin this, you know, they're picking so and so as a new kid. So there goes Joaquin. Okay. So it was in the schools, the streets with half of APD. You know, going to high school, it was not an easy thing. You know, I found discrimination, you know, by administrators, teachers, students, and half from APD. You know, walking down from the high school to our house. Most of the, you know, not all of the Mexican kids, we used to live on Main Street. We would walk together, and you will see half from APD back and forth until they finally will stop and ask, where are you going? Home. Okay. You have an ID, school ID, I mean, being underage, a high school student. So we had to deal with a lot of that. In our community, I mean, like, we got here in August. I didn't really get to go to the beach. You know, it was only from Johnson to Kelly, it's not that far. I didn't go to it. It took me about 8 months before I can actually go to the beach. So what we did, you know, it was from the house to school. You know, that was our path. If we had to go to the store, you know, we would drive with my parents to the store. We didn't do a lot of shopping here in Half Moon Bay. We have relatives in Daly City, so we go to Daly City. We'll take the bus to Daly City, do shopping, and come back over here to Half Moon Bay. So, you know, so the discrimination, it was all across the board. You know, from adults, from peers or on age. I started working early age. My first job, I was at the age of 14, coming out of Acuña. There used to be a program called Youth Employment Program, YEP. And through that program, I received, education, to do job applications, interviews, things like that. And I worked at the daycare center. There used to be a daycare center in Cunha before it was, I think it was the Buena Vida Learning Center, I believe it was called. So I worked there for the summer. And every summer I had a job, and I played sports in school. Throughout my 4 years, so I did soccer, basketball, track. I was an athlete, growing up. I actually still have a record at high school. Nobody's been able to break. But it was that type of lifestyle that we had. I was expelled from school when I was a senior. I was at the age of 18 already, and again it was accusations from the sheriff's office and from the Half Moon Bay PD. And luckily I was able to go back to school, sign a contract with the school, and then a couple months later I became the student of the month. So I don't know how that happened. I was one of two Mexican students graduating high school that attended a 4-year college. Most of the high school students graduating high school go to a 2-year college, CSM, Cañada, Skyline. One student went to San Francisco State, and I went to Chico. So I dealt with, Chico was very different, more diverse. Half Moon Bay, same thing, what I went through in Cunha for 1 year, I went through in high school for 4 years, right? Again, discrimination, PE class. Anybody who took PE here at the high school, PE, that's where everybody fights. So the harassment, the pushing around, the fighting, and everything was, because of discrimination, and harassment, and racism. Like I said, I have to go through that even with administrators, with vice principals at the high school. Right? So I'm glad you didn't have to do with anything of that, even to this day. I'm still going through it. All right, and I know some of the questions that you have about, how I felt, discriminated, being in politics, being the first Mexican immigrant, son of farm workers, to be elected to city council and to be the mayor, Thank you. It was a big accomplishment for the community. It was not my accomplishment. It was our accomplishment for the community. But many people realized that they did not want to see a Mexican representing, our city of Half Moon Bay. If you did follow politics last year, from the time that we redistricted Half Moon Bay, gerrymandering all the way. 20% of my district was where I live, on South Bay. 80% was Alita Park and Houses Lorraine, what the other candidate was. Right? So there was, the opportunity, to represent the community. If you, I'm gonna be a bit modest. I have a good friend, and one day we're walking Main Street, and he said, man, everybody knows you're here. I said, that's right. I said, why do you think they know me? He said, right away, because of the work that you do in the community. There was no question about it. He said, let's do a test. Tomorrow morning, we're gonna take a walk Main Street. And we're gonna see how many people say hi to you as we walk down Main Street. Right? Within an hour, we have more than 20 people that walked by or drove by that greeted us. He said, you think they do that to all the other council members? I said, I don't know. He said, I know who they are because of you, but if I didn't know who you were, I wouldn't know who they are, or the rest of them are. So that's discrimination, right? What we went through during the election last year, it was ridiculous, how we were attacked on social media. If you're following social media, Nextdoor, Facebook, unfortunately, I am Catholic, but I'm not talking about the Catholic Church. Members of the Catholic Church were not happy the way one of the meetings was handled. Not because I was the mayor, because I was a Mexican telling them what to do, when they could speak and when they have to stop speaking. I was the one being accused about, oh, he was to take the church, that property away from us. Like, nobody want to take that property away from anybody. But everything was being blamed on me, not anybody else. He was not the vice mayor. He was not the other council members. He was the mayor. He's the Mexican, the one with the long braid, the one that doesn't look like he should be the mayor. That's discrimination. That's racism. I'm sure if there was a member of the LGBTQ plus member doing the same thing, it would be not much different. Because even though we consider to be ourselves, a liberal, democratic, community, we're not. We are not. We go along with what our friends are saying. We support our friends because they're our friends. So I'm gonna jump on a bandwagon with you because you're my friend, not because they're right, not because they're democratic, because what they're our friends. And it's unfortunate, but the money still talks. Money still talks, in every single, we saw the election, presidential election, how much money was invested, to get, the thing elected. Right? So that's.
I'm going to stand up if you'll excuse me, because lots of lovely faces over there that I can't see. My name's Elliott Franks. I was born in the West Midlands of England a long time ago, and I was born female, and I was brought up as a girl who never felt like they were a girl. Knew from a very early age that I identified as male. I was very fortunate, I went to a very small kindergarten with about 10 kids. Then I went to a private school with 100 children in it to make sure that I didn't speak with the local accent. And then, and after that I passed the examination to go to the local grammar school, which was 599 girls and me, which is probably going to be the title of my memoir. It was terrifying. It was just awful. Apart from the fact that it was such an enormous number of people to me at that time, I know it's nothing compared to high schools here, but it was just, and kids can be very cruel. And that is really, I think, where I got a lot of discrimination because I was labelled as the school lesbian, which I wasn't. Never identified as a lesbian. Nothing wrong with being a lesbian. Some of my best friends are lesbians, as the saying goes. But that was it was in the 80s, and it was not mid 70s, early 80s, and it was just not what people were ready to accept. So there was a lot of getting beaten up and a lot of your school books getting flushed down the loo and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of stuff. I found my refuge in music because the only thing that I was able to do was sing. I was absolutely hopeless at anything academic because I just had too much going on between my gender identity and the bullying, and my family were very conservative, and so I had it coming from that direction as well. So the only thing I could really do was sing. So that's what I sort of threw myself into. And when I got to the end of high school with terrible grades, I knew that my voice wasn't really ready to be put into a conservatoire atmosphere where it was going to be very, very intense training. It just wasn't grown up enough for that. So I went to university, which somehow I managed to get into. I'm not quite sure why or how. I remember going for the interview, and it was to do a degree in plant biology, and I said, I don't ever really want to use this degree because I want to be an opera singer. the poor guy was like, what? But anyway, I think they took me as an oddity, and so I sort of got through that, and I got a degree, and then after that I went to music school. And I found that in university and in music school, things were much, much easier. You were on a sort of a more level playing field with everybody. People had open minds and or were prepared to think outside of boxes. At music school, I had a lot of discrimination from staff because I didn't play the games that female singers were supposed to play. I didn't wear the makeup, I didn't wear the right clothes. And the head of the department was like, how can I introduce you to somebody if you're walking down Manchester High Street looking like you've got Mickey Mouse sweatshirt on? You know, I'm like, come on, I don't care. What's that got to do with anything, you know? But then while I had been at university, I had met a very small American and fallen in love with her, and she had moved back here. She was just over a junior year abroad, and we had a 4.5-year long distance relationship, and then I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship from the Rotary International Foundation, and I went to the University of Michigan for a year and studied voice there, and then I relocated out here and started working here. And that young lady and I eventually got married back in 1996, and she left me 2 years later after 16 years. You know, by then I had started working as a singer, and I sort of had my own little following and my own way of doing things, and so I was able to stay. And in the music world, of course, everybody thinks, oh, everybody in the music world is either gay or something strange, it was just, there's just so much more flexibility in people in the arts, I think. So I in many ways, it's been not terribly uncomfortable for me, but then I decided to finally go through with my gender change, and that's made all the difference. I lost my voice because of the hormones that I have to take, so now I'm not really a useful singer anywhere for anybody. I just don't have enough range. So that's been very, very hard for me, and very hard for a lot of my colleagues, I think, because they don't really understand why somebody would do that if they had a gift to begin with, and sometimes I wonder why myself. So that's been difficult. But throughout my life, the people that I have been attached to romantically or socially, have been close with, have always known how I've identified. So it wasn't really a surprise to anybody that I went through this gender change and identified officially and legally as male. So yeah, I'm one of those scary trans people that you've all got to be careful of. You know, that good old Mr. Trump's got his guns out for. Yeah, we live in very interesting times. You know, I don't really know what's coming down the pike. I've got a trans friend who needs to renew his passport, and his birth certificate still says that he's female, so he's really worried about that. He and his wife have fostered a young lady from, I think she's from El Salvador, I can never quite remember. I think she's from El Salvador, she's about 16, she's terrified to get on public transportation and to go to school. There's just so much fear and so much sort of blatant discrimination that I really hoped at this point in our evolution we'd be past, but we're not, you know. You know, like Joaquin, I'm bilingual in English and American. And like Godfrey, people come up to feel my hair, but largely because they can't believe how fast it's leaving me. So yeah, I mean that's it really. And we just go through day to day. I'm now a funeral director. That's what I moved into when I could no longer sing. And I do love my job. I see dead people every day. But it's a very rewarding job. It's a job where I think I can really help people at a very difficult time of their lives. And I think because of a lot of things that I've gone through, a lot of things that we have gone through, I think there's more of an openness or willingness to be open with people. There's a bit more compassion that you can feel for people who are struggling in certain ways at difficult point in their lives. So that's what I do now, and I shouldn't really say, but maybe I'll see you all one day. Don't feel badly, I take very good care of you, I promise. I actually started up here at the top of the hill at Skyler once, so that's where my first position was, but now I'm in San Francisco, at the San Francisco Columbarium. And if you've never been to the San Francisco Columbarium, you must go. You really must. It's an incredible place. Most people don't know it. It's off of Anza between Stanley and Arguello. So block off the area.
Laurel Heights area.
Yeah. So it's really, really awesome place. But that's me.
I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience, so.
Do you want to use some?
So there's, I would think that maybe hope for solving some of these things would be with the younger generation. Do you see hope there, or are unfortunately their parents just teaching them all the same terrible stuff or whatever? So have you noticed anything? Like, please give me some hope. No.
Is that a question for everybody or for me?
Yeah,
for anybody who wants to
everyone
answer.
answer.
I do see hope. They're getting to see what's happening in our communities. Getting the thing elected, has opened the eyes for a lot of people. A lot of people are speaking up, and the children, are being more aware of what's going on. There was some ignorance thinking, we're complacent, like, oh, everything's okay. We're inclusive, we are a diverse community, rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, everything's good. Right, but when the thing got elected, everything changed. And whoever was, the people, I'm assuming some of you were, the protests, over the weekend, thank you. I was been busy, really busy the last days, but I saw there was a large group, and our children, the new generation gets to see that. The adults, the leaders, the parents, are stepping forward to make that change and to protest about what's happening in our country. I do have hope. I do believe in our children and our students, our new generations, they're gonna get things to the way they should be and remove the thing out of there.
Thank you.
I think there is hope, but I'm not sure that they think there is. And that's a very scary position for young people to be in. I sang for a while with a group in San Francisco called New Voices Bay Area, and it's a choir that accepts everybody of all gender identities, no matter where their voice is. So, for myself, I could sing part of the bass and part of the tenor, but not all of either of them. So you can just sort of jump around, and it's really a wonderful group of really talented and caring and politically aware and engaged young people, but also who are living in an immense amount of fear right now, because they really don't know how they can continue from where they are at this point. Things got a little bit better, and now everything is stuck again. And I think that's a really scary place for people to be in.
I think for,
This one.
did it go on? Okay, all right. I work with a high school group, and when it was right around the early part of November, I asked them who was old enough to vote. And right then, I had 5 students, none of them were old enough yet. And I just threw out there, well, what if you were? What would you do? And all of them said they would vote the way their parents were voting. And all of them, yeah, anyway, I don't have to say the rest of the sentence, you can see by the look on my face what the answer was. So I think that even though everything we talked about together, about what was important and what went into their mural, which was all about compassion, was inclusive, you know, diversity, everything that we're talking about right here tonight. Everything where everybody was on the same page. But because their parents were gonna vote a certain way, that's what they would do. And that was scary to me because they didn't agree with what their parents were voting for, but that's what they felt that they needed to do. The kindergartners and the first and second graders I just finished a mural with, and I said, everything going on in the world, what do you guys want to do a mural about? This is what they wanted. Imagine, love is always with you.
There's hope. There's hope.
I don't have much to say there. I have my fingers crossed that all will work out better in the long run. And it's a hope, it's a wish, and it's actually a belief. I just think things are gonna get better, but I'm scared.
Any other questions?
First of all, thank you all very, very much for sharing such personal stories. It's really insightful and appreciate it. Is it Godfrey? I'm sorry?
Godfrey.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Could you elaborate a little bit more about your experience with affirmative action? Because it's something that I've always wondered about how it's played out, what the retrospective thoughts are, and
Okay,
either personally or as a observer, please.
all right. So I think affirmative action is good. I think it was needed. I can see some issues with, it needed to balance the scale. That's what it was needed for. And I think that people, you know, it's a fighting world. It's a get what you can world. And so people will not be fair. And it helped. I mean, the black movement was good. It helped the women's movement. It probably helped Latino. I mean, it started something. Now it looks like it might be on a rebound, but maybe something got in us that, I mean, if you look at what the Pope Francis said. It's there. Just hopefully we can realize it and try to. I think affirmative action was a good plan. Maybe it's, at some point, these things are supposed to put themselves out. I used to be as an engineer, sometimes I would be testing the software that other people wrote, and the goal was try to break it. But the philosophy we had was, we're trying to put ourselves out of a job. We want to communicate with the developers in such a way that there are no problems anymore to have to test for. I mean, the goal is we find bugs in their software and stuff, but the goal is to eventually eliminate all that. So affirmative action needs to be there to set things right, but hopefully we won't need it anymore. So that's what I think. Okay.
I think we'll do one last question.
Yeah, Joaquin, I wanted to ask you,
Okay.
when you were in high school, did the counselors discourage you from going to a four-year university?
Yes.
I kind of figured that.
not only me, but a lot of the Latino students.
Right.
When I was in Chico, many of the students that wanted to go to a four-year college were being discouraged. So I helped a lot of them, to attend a four-year college. We excluded the counselors, said don't pay attention to them, come with me, I'll get you in, and I got them in.
Yeah, I had that experience working with the PASS program, a migrant program in the high school a few years back.
It happened. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, even after I graduated in '92 out of high school, a decade after, it was still happening.
Okay, we'll make this the last, or maybe, or Sophia, do you wanna ask?
Mine will be past it.
Okay. Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay. Joaquin, I came at 14 years old from Bolivia. And I didn't know what wetbacks were. I had no idea what another name that was called was sticks.
Wetback,
Now, this was in a Catholic high school in Oklahoma. Then I went to University of Texas because of my grades and because I learned English very well, and I was fluent reader of English as well as writer. And that helped me an awful lot because I could pass for a gringo. See what I mean? And as I graduated from from college and went to live in Austin, I found a completely different situation. The resistance, I was a teacher, I became a high school teacher, okay? And the resistance came from black students. And the Mexican students, I knew that they needed bettering in Spanish, but they did not want to have Spanish lectures, reading books, etc., right? They just wanted to be out in the group, in the band. And so I had that clash because I had this thing, you gotta study, and said, no, para que ya hablo español. And the parents were the same. Said, yeah, mi hijo no necesita más. Tío. And I said, just because you speak English well, I mean, they spoke English without an accent, but they didn't know how to read. And they didn't have the habits of reading that I was instilled from primary to secondary school in Bolivia. So I had no problems in college. But these kids that I taught in the countryside in Del Valley, I don't know if you know Texas, but Austin has several suburbs that are very agricultural and these kids either didn't have the ambition or they didn't listen to their parents because their Mexican parents always said to them, get an education, be a good student, blah, 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 because I don't want you to be a farmer. I don't want you to be a person that doesn't make any money. I want you to be una persona de bien, right? Una gente. And that was a crazy attitude. But what I wanted to ask you was, I overcame the insults in the high school because the priest, who was the rector, managed to explain to the Anglo kids that the group, we were about 15 guys from Mexico, from Nicaragua, from Argentina, from Bolivia, and now I don't like the explanation that the priest gave him, but it kind of calmed down the aggressiveness and the antagonism. Plus, it calmed me down because I got into 3 fights with gringos because they called me names from behind their classroom and their room. And, you know, I wasn't gonna take that when they explained to me what it meant. So we got into these fights, and the priests were able to have, I don't know, sessions where they explained to them that we weren't Mexicans. We were kids from the higher classes. Yeah, we were going to college, we were learning English, right? That calmed them down, but it didn't stop the language. It didn't stop. And I wanted to ask you if you in college were able to overcome.
Okay, I'm gonna actually have to stop because the library is closing, but you are welcome to talk to any of the panelists afterwards, so I apologize. Yes, we have to go outside. Because the library is closing. Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Also, next month, third week of May, Monday, we're having Coast Bride come back. They did last year, but we only scratched the surface. So we've asked them to come back in May. Thank you.
What does she say?